Summary of Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders. The story of Lincoln in the Bardo is told in the form of a series of monologues, and it opens with the voice of Hans Wallmann telling how he died, even though he refuses to acknowledge that he has truly died. Just as he was about to make love to his much younger wife for the first time, he was hit by a light beam, which stopped him. Since then, he has lived here in the Bardo, where he lies in what he calls a sick box. Every night, he gets out of this sick box and joins his friends, like Roger Bevans III, who now helps him tell his story because he has heard it so many times. Bevans finally tells his own story, saying that he cut his wrists because his secret lover, Gilbert, broke up with him. Bevans regretted cutting himself as soon as he did it, because he realized that life is a beautiful gift. He doesn't think he's dead either, like Wallmann. Instead, he says he's lying in a pool of blood on the kitchen floor, waiting for his mother to find him. Wallmann and Bevans' bodies show their ties to the real world, just like all the other souls in the Bardo. These ties keep them in the Bardo, which is a place where souls stop on their way from life to the afterlife. Wallmann, on the other hand, always has a very big erection that he has to drag around with him wherever he goes. Bevans, on the other hand, has a lot of eyes, mouths, ears, and hands, and they all grow when he thinks about all the wonderful things about being alive. As these two people talk about how they look, they notice a young boy named Willie Lincoln who has just come in the Bardo. Children aren't supposed to tarry here, they say, so they tell him to go on, saying he must want to leave. Even though they try, Willie just says, "I feel I have to wait." As Wallmann and Bevans try to get Willie to leave the Bardo, a friend of theirs shows up. The Reverend Everly Thomas is an older guy with straight hair and a face that always looks shocked, but Saunders hasn't said why yet. He tries to get Willie to leave, just like Wallmann and Bevans. The three men take Willie to see the trainer girl, who is the only other young person they know who has stayed in the Bardo. It seems that she tarried for so long that roots grew up from the ground, wrapped around her, and formed into a carapace, forever attaching her to a scary iron fence that marks the limit of where souls in the Bardo can venture. Since then, she hasn't been able to move and keeps manifesting as terrible things she can't control. When Wallmann, Bevans, the Reverend, and Willie get close to her, for example, she looks like a horrid blackened furnace. At first, she doesn't want to talk, so she transforms into a number of sad things. When the group is about to leave, though, she changes back into a human and tells Willie her story. She says that she always wanted a child, but she never got old enough to have sexual relations, even though many men wanted to date her. Her speech is very strange and filled with strong swear words that she learned in the Bardo and now can't stop using. Willie gets what he wants from listening to the trainer girl. When he leaves the fence, he tells his adult guides that he wants to move on, even if he is destined to become like her. Wallmann, Bevans, and the Reverend are relieved and get ready to leave, but Willie's eyes suddenly land on something behind them. When they turn around, Abraham Lincoln is coming toward them. Saunders sprinkles the book with quotes from biographies, letters, and other archival writings about Lincoln's leadership. Even though there are too many to list here, these snippets give a look at the president's public life, his private life, and the wide range of opinions about him as a man and leader in the country. This is important because Lincoln in the Bardo is set in the first year of the Civil War. This is how Saunders talks about a big party that was held at the White House a few weeks before Willie died. While lawmakers were having fun downstairs, Willie was dying of his illness upstairs. Even though the doctors told Mr. and Mrs. Lincoln that their son would get better, they worried about him all the time. This, of course, turned out to be false, and Willie died a few weeks later. This makes people all over the country both angry and sad. Even though Lincoln can't see Wallmann, Bevans, the Reverend, and Willie, he moves toward them. When he gets to Willie's tomb, he opens the door and goes inside. He pulls his son's box off the wall, sets it on the floor, and opens it. Willie and his friends from the Bardo move into the tomb as he does this. They watch him reach down and hold his dead son in his arms. Willie is trying to talk to his father the whole time, but Lincoln can't hear him. Willie slips back into his body to get his attention, But in the process, he goes into his father's body by mistake. He suddenly knows what it's like to be an adult, and he can think and feel like Lincoln. Lincoln tells himself that he can go back to the tomb whenever he wants, which makes him feel better. "Dear boy," he says to himself just before he leaves, "I'll be back. I promise you that." Lincoln leaves the tomb at this point, leaving Willie sitting in the corner. Volman, Bevins, and the Reverend all tell the boy to leave the Bardo again, but he says he can't because his father is coming back. Many interested souls come to the mausoleum because it's so rare for a person to talk to, let alone touch, someone in the Bardo. They try to get Willie's attention by telling him their stories and hoping he'll tell Lincoln their messages the next time he comes. However, no one knows of a safe way to talk to real people. This seems to be a highly debated topic, since Volman and Bevins say they once affected 2 people by entering them, but they weren't very clear about how they did it. Suddenly, light blobs fall on the people living in the Bardo. These blobs are sent to each soul to persuade it to move on. They trick souls into going by pretending to be loved ones. When this happens to a soul, the whole Bardo echoes with a familiar, yet always bone-chilling, fire sound associated with the matter light blooming phenomenon, which is a beam of light that takes away the soul that has chosen to leave. Bevins, Volman, and the Reverend think that one of the fire sounds must have been Willie leaving the Bardo, but when the attack is over, they find Willie sitting on top of the tomb, looking thin and weak. Then they see that tentacles have started to wrap around him and try to keep him there forever. While the Reverend tries to pull these roots out of the ground, Volman and Bevins sneak off to find Lincoln again and try to talk him into coming back so that Willie can get into him. They think that if they do this, Willie will understand that his father wouldn't want him to stay in such a sad place. When they see the man sitting on a path of grass, they take his form and instantly know everything about his life, including the fact that he is the president. Lincoln forgot to lock the tomb, which is a good thing, so Volman and Bevins look for the lock in his pocket. Soon, he gets his hand around it and knows he has to go back. The Reverend says that he is not like his friends because he knows that he has died while he is pulling weeds. In fact, he was a priest for most of his life. When he died quietly, he was walking along a road with 2 strangers. One was wearing a yellow costume and walked in front. The second one was dressed for a funeral. Soon, the group found a diamond castle where a Christ messenger was sitting in front of a big jeweled door. The messenger called the man in the swimming suit forward, and he and 2 helpers looked at how the man lived. When they saw that the results were good, they danced out and sent the Reverend through the diamond doors, giving him a glimpse of heaven. The doors then closed, and the second man stepped through. He didn't have as much luck as the first man, though, and when the doors opened for him, the Reverend saw straight into hell. The doors closed again, and the Christ messenger and his fellows started judging the Reverend's life. When their first response made it seem like the Reverend had lived even worse than the second man, he turned and ran. Gladly, no one came after him, but as he ran away, several beings whispered in his ear that he shouldn't tell anyone about what he'd seen, or else he'd be judged harder when he came back. When the Reverend ran as far as he could, he passed out. When he woke up, he was in the Bardo, where he has stayed ever since. Lincoln goes back to the tomb because he wants to see his son one more time. When the Reverend, Bevins, and Volman see that Willie can't move forward, backward, or side to side because of the tentacles, they push the boy through the tomb roof so he can be with his father. Unfortunately, Manders, the groundskeeper, comes to check on the president at this time. He and Lincoln agree to go back together after Lincoln has a moment alone with his son. Manders agrees and waits outside for him, but Willie is now stuck to the wall by tentacles and can't get to his father. As Bevins starts to free the boy, Volman tries to keep Lincoln from saying goodbye for the last time. Lincoln is in the middle of saying goodbye and feels guilty because he now knows what it's like to lose a child. He feels like he's caused this kind of pain to thousands of people by keeping the Civil War going. Before Willie can get out of the tentacles, Lincoln walks out into the crowd of people who live in the Bardo, but he can't see them. Bevins, Volman, and the Reverend jump into his body and try to get him to turn around. they also try to get all the souls watching to do the same. Then, all of a sudden, Lincoln holds the souls of black men, black women, and white women. Bevins says, "What a pleasure it was to be there." He explains that inhabiting not only Lincoln but also so many other Bardo residents is a highly satisfying experience that expands each person and helps them understand each other better. Lincoln keeps going, even though he's happy, and the souls start leaving one by one. When the people who live in the Bardo go back to Willie, they find that the tentacles have wrapped around him. At this point, a deep voice with a lisp asks if they'd like to move Willie to the mausoleum's roof so he can stay there forever instead of staying in the dark building. The Reverend, Volman, and Bevins are shocked when they see that the tendril is made up of people about the size of beans who are writhing and twisting their faces. They find out that these beings are in hell, but not the worst level. Even though they all agree that they've done bad things, they all say that it wasn't their fault because they were predisposed to be bad. The Reverend is horrified by the hell beings' passive attitude about their own sins. He still doesn't know why he deserves to be damned for all time. The Reverend says yes when the tendril souls ask again if they should move Willie to the roof. The Reverend says that he will take the boy to the roof when they let him go. Grabbing Willie in his arms, he runs out of the mausoleum, away from the tendril, and heads for the church in the graveyard. He thinks that God's power will keep such evil things away if he goes there. The tendril goes after the Reverend and trips him up when it catches up to him. In order for the tendril to hold Willie, it wraps around the Reverend and threatens to hold him there forever. The Reverend, who knows what he has to do, screams in fear, "That castle! That terrible diamond castle," he said just before he was killed by the beam of light. This works, and Willie is freed from the tendril. Volman grabs the boy and runs into the church, where they are surprised to find President Lincoln. The tendril comes back together and waits outside the church. It tells Willie and his workers that it's just getting stronger before going inside. Willie goes to see his father at the same time that many people from the Bardo come into the church through its walls. Willie finds out that Lincoln has died while he is inside his body. This helps him accept that he has to move on. When he leaves, he looks around at all the souls and tells them what they don't want to hear: they're all dead. As soon as he gets them to believe this, a lot of people in the Bardo start to fall victim to the matter light blooming phenomenon, and Willie does the same. Volman and Bevins are both afraid to accept that they are dead, but they help each other deal with this shocking fact. Before they leave, though, they go to the trainer girl and move so that the matter light blooming phenomenon breaks through the strands that are holding her down. This frees her. Lincoln feels a sudden sense of relief when Willie goes. In response, he gets up and walks away. As he does this, Thomas Havens, who used to be a slave, jumps into his body and matches his steps, enjoying what it's like to be inside such a powerful man. In fact, Havens has such a positive experience to the event that he decides to ride away in the president's body, happily passing past the sleeping houses of their countrymen.
About the author. George Saunders was born in Amarillo, Texas, in 1958, but he spent most of his childhood in Chicago. When he was 18, he went to the Colorado School of Mines. In 1981, he got a degree in geophysical engineering from that school. After he graduated, he worked as a field geophysicist in the oil areas of Sumatra, an island in Southeast Asia. Saunders started reading a lot while working in the oil fields, maybe because he could only get to the nearest town by chopper. A year and a half later, he got sick after swimming in a river full of feces, so he went back to the US. During this time, he did a few hourly jobs before getting his master's in creative writing from Syracuse University. While he was in the writing program at Syracuse, he met Paula Reddick, who was also in the program. After 3 weeks, they made plans to get married. Within 3 years of getting married, the couple had 2 girls and Saunders got a job as a technical writer. At this point, he started writing books. His first book, a collection of short stories called Civil War Land in Bad Decline, came out in the end. Saunders is best known for his short stories, but he also writes travel pieces and profiles for well-known magazines like The New Yorker and GQ. His long-awaited first book came out in 2017, and it won the Man Booker Prize. He has also won the P.N. Hemingway Award and grants from Guggenheim and MacArthur. He is a teacher in the creative writing program at Syracuse University.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.